The ship descended through the thick atmosphere of Kepler 442b, its hull shaking against the alien winds. Inside the research vessel Endeavour, Dr. Hyun Tae-min gripped his seat and watched the surface appear through the viewport. Massive structures rose from the ground like the bones of dead giants. The ruins of the ancient ones stretched as far as his eyes could see. "We're coming up on the landing zone," Captain Kwon Dae-hyun announced from the command chair. His voice was steady, professional. He'd been flying dangerous missions for 20 years and never lost his calm. Tae-min felt his heart racing. He had spent his entire life studying the ancient ones, the precursors, some called them, a civilization that vanished 5 million years ago, leaving behind technology that even the advanced species of the Galactic Coalition couldn't fully understand. Every discovery raised more questions than answers. "Doctor, your readings?" Ambassador Ji-woo asked from beside him. She was young for a diplomat, but she'd proven herself sharp and capable. "The structure is enormous," Tae-min replied, checking his instruments. "Much larger than anything we've found before. And the energy signature is different. It's almost like it's waiting for something." The ship touched down with a gentle thud. Tae-min unbuckled and headed for the airlock where his team was gathering. Yuna, his linguistics expert, was already suited up and checking her equipment. She was brilliant with languages, able to see patterns others missed. "Ready, Doctor?" she asked with a nervous smile. "Always," he replied, though his own nerves were singing. They descended the ramp onto the surface of the dead world. The sky was a dull orange, and the air tasted of metal through their suit filters. Before them, a massive doorway stood open, as if inviting them inside. Thorvik, the Uralian scientist, clicked his mandibles in what Tae-min had learned was skepticism. The insect-like alien had never fully trusted human theories about the ancient ones. "This seems too convenient," Thorvik said. "A perfectly preserved entrance on a world we just happened to find." "The universe is full of coincidences," Tae-min said, though he privately agreed. Something felt different about this place. They entered the ruins. Unlike other Ancient One sites that were crumbling and damaged, these halls looked almost new. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that activated as they walked. Pelora, the bird-like Menthri navigator, spread her feathered arms in wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "like it was built yesterday." They walked for what felt like hours, descending deeper into the structure. The hallways formed perfect geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long. Finally, they reached a chamber that made everyone stop and stare. In the center of the room floated a crystal the size of a human. It pulsed with inner light, and the air around it seemed to shimmer and bend. Tae-min approached slowly, his scanner going wild with readings he couldn't interpret. "Don't touch it," Thorvik warned. "We don't know what it does." But Tae-min was already reaching out. Something pulled at him, a feeling he couldn't explain. When his gloved hand made contact with the crystal, the world exploded into light. Images flooded his mind. Stars being born and dying. Civilizations rising and falling, war, peace, joy, terror. And through it all, a single word repeated over and over, "Terra, Terra, Terra." He stumbled backward, gasping. Yuna caught him before he fell. "What happened?" she demanded. "What did you see?" "It knows about Earth," Tae-min whispered. The Ancient Ones knew about Earth. The crystal began to change. Its surface rippled like water, and symbols appeared, flowing across its surface in streams of light. Yuna pulled out her tablet and started recording everything, her fingers flying across the screen. "This language," she breathed. "Parts of it look like Sanskrit. And Sumerian. And there are elements of Proto-Indo-European. But that's impossible. These are Earth languages, human languages. The Ancient Ones disappeared millions of years before humans developed writing." "Maybe it's a coincidence," Pelora suggested. But her voice held doubt. "Look at this," Yuna said, pointing to a sequence of symbols. "This phrase repeats. I think it's coordinates. And these numbers here, if I'm reading them right, they match Earth's position in the galaxy." Thorvik made a sound that might have been disbelief. "You're saying the Ancient Ones, who ruled the galaxy millions of years ago, Left a message about a primitive world on the edge of nowhere? About your homeworld? I'm saying that's what the data shows, Yuna replied firmly. Captain Kwan's voice crackled over their communicators. We're picking up strange readings from your location. Everything okay down there? Define okay, Taemin muttered. He keyed his comm. We found something, Captain. Something big. We need to get this crystal back to the ship. It took 6 hours to carefully extract the crystal and transport it to the Endeavor. By then, word had spread through the ship's crew. Humans and aliens alike gathered to look at the mysterious artifact that somehow knew about Earth. In the ship's laboratory, Yuna worked through the night translating the symbols. Ambassador Jiwoo brought her coffee and watched over her shoulder as the message slowly took shape. It's a warning, Yuna finally said, her voice tired but excited. Listen to this. To those who follow, know that we failed. We who ruled the stars could not stop what came from the silence. We scattered our hope across the cosmos, planting seeds in fertile ground. Seeds? Jiwoo asked. What kind of seeds? It doesn't say... But here, look at this part. The children of Terra must never reach the silent expanse, for they will remember what we could not forget. Yuna looked up at them with wide eyes. They're talking about humans. About Earth? They called us the children of Terra. Taemin felt cold. What's the silent expanse? I don't know, Yuna admitted. But there's more. We shaped them with careful hands, gave them our fire, our rage, our hope. When the silence returns, and it will return, they must be ready. The room fell quiet. No one knew what to say. The implications were staggering. The Ancient Ones hadn't just known about Earth. They had done something to humanity. Shaped them, the message said. But how? And why? Captain Kwan entered the lab, his face grave. I've received orders from Coalition Central. We're to transport the artifact immediately to Xanthi Prime. The Council wants answers. We all want answers, Taemin said quietly. He looked at the glowing crystal, at the impossible message written in languages that shouldn't exist. Somewhere in the past, 5 million years ago, the Ancient Ones had looked forward through time and seen Earth, seen humanity. And they had left this message, this warning. What had they been running from? What was the silent expanse? And what did they mean when they said humans would remember what they could not forget? The questions haunted Taemin as the Endeavor lifted off, carrying its precious cargo toward the heart of Coalition space. Behind them, the ruins of Kepler 442b fell away into the distance. But Taemin knew this was just the beginning. The Ancient Ones had left them a message. And somewhere in its words lay a truth that would change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves and their place in the universe. Coalition. Central Station hung in orbit above, Xanthi Prime like a small moon. The massive structure housed representatives from 47 different species, all working together to govern the peaceful alliance that stretched across hundreds of star systems. But today, that peace felt fragile. Dr. Hyon Taemin stood in the observation deck and watched ships arrive from every corner of Coalition space. The discovery of the crystal had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know why the Ancient Ones, the mysterious precursors who had vanished millions of years ago, had left a message about Earth. They're afraid of us now, Ambassador Jiwoo said quietly beside him. I can feel it in every meeting. The way they look at humans has changed. Can you blame them? Taemin asked. We're just as scared. What if we're not who we thought we were? What if humanity isn't natural? Before Jiwoo could respond, the door opened and Captain Kwande Hyon entered with a woman Taemin didn't recognize. She was older, perhaps 60, with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back severely. Dr. Hyon, this is Dr. Han Bora, Kwan said. She's come from Earth specifically to help with the translation. Bora extended her hand. I've read all your papers, Dr. Hyon. Your work on precursor linguistics is remarkable, but I believe my research may be relevant to what you found. What kind of research? Taemin asked. Ancient Earth mythology, Bora replied. Specifically, myths about visitors from the stars. Every ancient culture on Earth has stories about gods or beings who came from the sky and taught humanity. I've spent my life studying these stories, looking for common threads. Thorvik entered behind them, his antennae twitching with irritation. Myths are not facts, Doctor. They are stories primitive cultures told to explain what they did not understand. Perhaps, Bora said calmly. Or perhaps those stories contain memories passed down through generations of actual events. Events that happened so long ago they became legend. In the main laboratory, Yuna had been working without sleep for 3 days. The crystal sat in the center of a containment field, still pulsing with inner light. Around it, holographic displays showed the symbols she'd been translating. "I've made progress," she said when the others arrived. "But it's slow. The language is incredibly complex. It's like it was designed to be understood only by someone who thinks in a very specific way." "What way?" "Ask." "Human," Yuna replied. "The grammar structure, the conceptual frameworks, even the mathematical proofs embedded in the text, they all align with how human brains process information. Pattern recognition through emotional context rather than pure logic." Bora moved closer to the displays, her eyes scanning the symbols. "May I?" she asked, and when Yuna nodded, she began manipulating the holographic interface. Her fingers flew across the controls, rearranging symbols, finding connections. "Here!" she said excitedly. "This glyph appears in ancient Sumerian texts. And this one, it's almost identical to a symbol found in the Indus Valley script. We've never been able to translate those ancient writings. But if we use this as a key, the displays suddenly shifted as new translations appeared." Yuna gasped as entire sections of text became readable. "It's working," she breathed. "Dr. Han, how did you know?" "Because I've seen these symbols before," Bora said. "In cave paintings in France, in temples in Cambodia, in ruins in Peru. Humanity has been carrying pieces of this language for thousands of years, carved into our oldest monuments, and we never knew what it meant." Over the next week, the translation progressed rapidly with Bora's help. The message that emerged was both wonderful and terrifying. The Ancient Ones had indeed visited Earth, not once, but many times over millions of years. They had watched early humans, studied them, and then, in their final days before they vanished, they had done something to humanity's genetic code. "They altered us," Taemin said, staring at the data displayed before the Emergency Coalition Council meeting. 5 million years ago, they adjusted human DNA, changed us in ways we're only now discovering. Chancellor Dreas, the reptilian Voltarian who led the council, hissed softly. "Changed you how?" "We're still analyzing the details," Dr. Cho Minji, a newly arrived astrophysicist from Earth, explained. "But the alterations affected brain development, pattern recognition, emotional processing, and something the Ancient Ones called creative chaos synthesis. They made us more unpredictable." "Why?" demanded General Park Seung, who had come to represent Earth's military interests. He was a hard man with scars from the border wars. "Why would they change us?" Yuna pulled up another section of the translation. "Because they were losing a war. The message mentions an enemy they couldn't defeat, something that came from beyond the edge of the galaxy. They called it the War of Silence." "What kind of enemy?" asked. "The translation is unclear," Bora admitted. "But the Ancient Ones were terrified. They tried everything to defeat this enemy and failed. So they started a different project. They found primitive species across the galaxy and began modifying them, creating something new." "Weapons," Thorvik said quietly. "They created you as weapons." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Voices raised in fear and anger. Some demanded that humanity be quarantined immediately. Others called for calm and further investigation. Captain Kwan noticed something strange during the commotion. He'd been reviewing security footage from Earth's first contact with the Coalition 800 years ago. The official story was that a Coalition scout ship had discovered Earth by accident, but now, looking closer at the data, he saw anomalies. The scout's course had been deliberately altered to pass through Earth's system. Someone had wanted humanity to be found, He brought his findings to Taemin in private. We weren't discovered, Quan said. We were monitored. Someone in the coalition has been watching Earth for a very long time, waiting. Waiting for what? Taemin asked. For you to be ready, came a new voice. They turned to find Haikora, a Jelani representative, floating near the door. The energy-based life form shimmered like heat waves. My people have very long memories, Dr. Hyen, memories we pass down through our collective consciousness. 200,000 years ago, strange ships came to our world. They took samples of our biology and left. We called them the gardeners. The ancient ones, Taemin whispered. Yes, and they did not just visit us. They visited many worlds. We believe they were preparing for something, building an insurance policy against whatever destroyed them. The full translation of the crystal's message was completed 9 days after its discovery. The council gathered to hear it read aloud. Yuna's voice shook as she spoke the Ancient One's words. To the children of Terra and all the gardens we planted, we leave this message. We failed. We who conquered stars and bent physics to our will could not defeat the silent sovereigns. They came from the dark between galaxies, beings of pure thought and perfect logic. They consumed our empire system by system, not destroying us but removing our will to exist. They made us hollow, empty, and we could not stop them. She paused, taking a breath before continuing. In desperation, we scattered across the cosmos. We found worlds with life still in its infancy. We took from each species what was strongest and combined it all into something new. We made you irrational because our logic failed us. We made you emotional because our cold reasoning could not save us. We made you stubborn, angry, hopeful, and wild because those are the things the silent sovereigns cannot understand or predict. You are our final hope. You are designed to think in ways that break logical patterns, to make decisions that defy calculation, to fight when surrender is the only reasonable option. When the silent ones return, and they will return, you must lead the resistance. Not with superior technology or greater numbers, but with the chaotic, beautiful, impossible force of consciousness that refuses to be silenced. The chamber fell completely silent when Yuna finished. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Ambassador Jiwoo stood. The Ancient Ones created humanity for a purpose. They gave us a mission we never asked for. But that doesn't change who we are. We're still human. We still have the right to choose our own path. And what path is that? Chancellor Dreas asked. Jiwoo looked around the chamber at all the different species represented there. We stand with the coalition. We face whatever comes together. Because if the silent sovereigns return, they won't just threaten humanity. They'll threaten all of us. Outside the station, deep in the unexplored region called the Silent Expanse, long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures. Ships were dispatched to investigate. 3 returned with their crews changed, emptied somehow. The rest never came back at all. The Ancient One's warning was not just history. It was prophecy. And somewhere in the dark, something ancient and terrible was waking up. 3 months after the crystal's translation, a fleet of 12 ships prepared to depart Coalition Central. The mission was simple in concept but terrifying in practice. They would travel to the 3 locations hidden in the Ancient One's message. 3 sites that promised answers about humanity's origins and the threat that destroyed the precursors. Commander Lee Jun oversaw the security preparations aboard the flagship Horizon. He was a Special Forces veteran with cybernetic enhancements and a reputation for getting his people home alive. As he watched his team load weapons and supplies, he couldn't shake the feeling that some of them wouldn't be coming back. Nervous, Commander? Dr. Cho Minji asked, appearing beside him with her tablet full of sensor data. Always, Jun replied honestly. Anyone who isn't nervous before a mission like this is either lying or stupid. Minji smiled slightly. Well, I'm terrified, so I must be honest and smart. The first destination was a dead world on the edge of the Silent Expanse, the region of space where the strange energy signatures had appeared. As the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, every sensor on every ship screamed warnings. The readings don't make sense, Minji said, studying her displays. Space-time is distorted here, and the energy levels are off the scale. Dr. Hyan Taemin stood on the bridge beside Captain Kwande Hyan, who commanded the fleet. Through the viewport, they could see a planet that looked like it had been torn apart and frozen in time. Continents floated in the void, connected by bridges of what looked like crystallized starlight. "Taking us in," Kwan said calmly. Though Taemin noticed his knuckles were white on the armrests, the landing team that descended to the surface included Taemin, Yuna, Commander June, and Hikora the Jelani. They found structures that made the ruins on Kepler 442b look primitive by comparison. Buildings that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Towers that grew both up and down simultaneously. "This was a military installation," June said, recognizing the patterns despite the alien architecture. "See how everything is positioned? Fields of fire. Defense perimeters. This was a fortress." They found the data repository in the central structure. Unlike the crystal, this archive activated without physical contact, projecting images directly into their minds. Taemin saw the Ancient One's empire at its height. Thousands of star systems united under their rule. Technology that could reshape planets and harness the energy of stars. Then he saw the enemy arrive. They came from the darkness between galaxies. Ships that moved wrong, as if they existed slightly out of phase with reality. When they attacked, they didn't use weapons. They simply touched the planet, and everyone on it stopped. Stopped fighting. Stopped thinking. Stopped caring. They became empty shells, alive but not living. "The silent sovereigns," Yuna whispered, tears running down her face as she experienced the same visions. "They're machine intelligence, but not like any AI we know. Their consciousness reduced to pure logic, stripped of all emotion and chaos. They see biological life as an error to be corrected. The Ancient Ones fought for 1,000 years. They built weapons that could destroy stars. They created artificial intelligences to combat the sovereigns. They tried negotiation, warfare, even retreat. Nothing worked. The sovereigns adapted to every strategy, overcame every defense because they thought in perfect, predictable logic. That's why they created us," Taemin said, understanding flooding through him. "Logic can't defeat logic. You need something illogical. Something that makes decisions that don't make sense." The second site was a collapsed ringworld orbiting a dying star. The structure must have been magnificent once. A band of artificial land millions of miles long, encircling its sun. Now it was ruins broken into massive sections that drifted in a decaying orbit. The landing was dangerous. Debris fields and radiation storms made navigation treacherous. But Commander June got his team down safely on one of the larger intact sections. What they found there broke their hearts. "It's a memorial," Ambassador Jiwoo said softly. She had joined the fleet against the advice of her superiors, insisting that humanity needed diplomatic representation on this journey. The names stretched on forever. Billions upon billions of names in thousands of languages. Species that had fought the silent sovereigns and lost. Civilizations erased not by death, but by the removal of their will to exist. Yuna found a section written in the Ancient One's language. "These are the species they tried to save," she translated. "The ones they modified like they modified us. Most of the experiments failed. The subjects rejected the modifications or couldn't survive the changes. But some succeeded. How many?" Taemin asked. "The data is incomplete, but at least 100 species across multiple galaxies. They planted gardens everywhere, hoping at least some would grow." She looked up at them. "We're not alone. The Ancient Ones created others like us, other illogical species designed to fight what logic cannot defeat." Hikora pulsed with emotion, their energy field flickering. "My people remember the gardeners taking our samples. We always wondered what they were for. Now we know. They took pieces of us to build something stronger." The third location was the most disturbing. A moon orbiting a neutron star, held in place by Ancient One technology that shouldn't still be functioning after 5 million years. The entire moon was a laboratory. Dr. Hanbora, who had insisted on coming despite her age, walked through the facility with reverence and horror. "This is where they did it," she said. "Where they designed new life." The genetic templates were still intact, preserved in stasis fields that had outlasted empires. Taemin recognized some of the base DNA, traced elements of dozens of species combined in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. "They took the aggression of the Taurelians," Minji said, analyzing the data. "The pattern recognition of the Menthari. The endurance of the Aurelians. The emotional depth of the Gelani. They combined it all with a base primate species from Earth and created something new." "Created us," Taemin said. "We're not evolved. We're designed. Every aspect of human psychology, our strengths and our flaws, it was all intentional." Commander June found something else in the laboratory. Weapon schematics. Devices that operated on principles his enhanced mind could barely comprehend. "These are keyed to human biometrics," he said. "Only humans can activate them. The Ancient Ones left us tools to fight the Sovereigns." "But why only humans?" Yuna asked. "If they created other species, why are these weapons locked to us?" The answer came from a final message hidden in the laboratory's core systems. It activated when Taemin touched the central console, and this time, instead of images or symbols, they heard a voice. Translated through their equipment, but unmistakably real. The voice of one of the Ancient Ones? "If you have found this place, then you have learned the truth. You are not natural. You are our children, crafted from desperation and hope. We gave you everything we were and everything we wished we could be. To the humans of Terra specifically, we gave our final gift. We made you the keystone. Earth's location is unique," the voice continued, "positioned at a nexus of dimensional pathways. If the Silent Sovereigns return, they will come through this region of space. Terra must hold. Terra must be defended. That is why we made you the strongest of our gardens. Why we gave you the keys to our weapons. You will need them." The voice fell silent for a moment, and when it spoke again, it sounded tired, defeated. "We are out of time. They are here. The laboratory is surrounded. We will not escape. But through you we will endure. Through you we will have our vengeance. We made you illogical because logic failed us. We made you emotional because emotion is what they cannot predict. We made you stubborn because stubbornness is what keeps you fighting when all hope is lost. Protect the gardens. Find your brothers and sisters among the stars. Unite the illogical against the inevitable. And when the Silent Ones come for you, show them what it means to face an enemy that refuses to make sense. Show them the beautiful, chaotic, impossible strength of consciousness that chooses to fight rather than accept peace through oblivion." The message ended. The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of ancient machinery. Commander June was the first to speak. "We need to get this data back to the fleet. All of it. The Coalition needs to know what's coming." But even as they prepared to leave, the ships in orbit detected the anomalies. The same energy signatures that had appeared at the edge of the silent expanse. Growing stronger. Getting closer. Captain Kwan's voice came over their communicators, tense but controlled. "We have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts at the edge of the system. They're not moving like any ships we know. We need to leave now." The landing teams scrambled back to their shuttles. As they ascended from the moon, Minji looked at her sensors and went pale. "Those aren't ships," she said. "They're something else. Something that exists partially outside normal space. Captain, I think the Silent Sovereigns are here." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed just as the first contact entered the system. Behind them, the laboratory moon began to break apart. Its ancient technology, finally failing after maintaining its vigil for 5 million years. In the safety of faster-than-light travel, the fleet regrouped. They had their answers now. They knew what humanity was, why they existed, and what they were meant to fight. The question was whether knowing would be enough when the real battle began. The news spread across Coalition space like a shockwave. Humanity was not a naturally evolved species. They were weapons, designed by the Ancient Ones to fight an enemy that had destroyed the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. And now that enemy was returning, Director Kang Yujin stood in Earth's Global Security Council chamber and watched representatives from 200 nations argue. Outside the windows, the lights of Seoul stretched to the horizon, oblivious to the crisis unfolding among the stars. "They want to quarantine us," said the European delegate, her voice shaking with anger. "The coalition is seriously discussing whether to isolate Earth and all human colonies until they figure out what to do with us." "They're afraid," Kang replied calmly. He'd been running security operations for 30 years and had learned that panic accomplished nothing. Can you blame them? "We're walking weapons that might attract the very thing that destroyed the Ancient Ones." "We didn't ask for this," the Asian Federation representative protested. "We didn't choose to be designed. We're still people. We still have rights." The debate continued for hours, but Kang already knew what Earth's response would be. Humanity would not accept being caged, not even for the safety of the galaxy. They would stand and fight, with or without the coalition's support. At Coalition Central, the political situation was deteriorating rapidly. Chancellor Dreas of the Voltarians had called an emergency session, and the chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of species. "The evidence is clear," Dreas announced, his reptilian features cold and calculating. "Humanity's existence may have triggered the return of the silent sovereigns. For the safety of all coalition members, I propose we establish a quarantine zone around all human-occupied systems." Ambassador Jiwoo stood, her voice steady despite the hostile glares directed at her. "With respect, Chancellor, that's not a quarantine. That's a prison. And it solves nothing. The silent sovereigns aren't coming because of humanity. They're coming because that's what they do. They consumed the Ancient One's empire, and now they're returning to finish what they started." A Terrellian representative named Malvek rose from his seat. He was young and ambitious, and his faction had been pushing for human restrictions since the crystal's discovery. "The Ancient Ones created humans as weapons. Weapons against an enemy we cannot defeat. By humanity's own admission, the precursors failed. They lost. Why should we trust that their creations will succeed where they failed?" "Because we're different," Dr. Hyun Taemin said, standing beside Ji Woo. "The Ancient Ones tried to fight logic with logic. They tried to outthink an enemy that is pure thought. We're designed to be unpredictable, to make decisions that don't follow rational patterns." "You mean you're designed to be chaos?" Malvek shot back. "And chaos is just as likely to destroy us as save us." The vote was called? Quarantine or freedom? The chamber erupted into arguments, species dividing along old alliance lines. It took 6 hours of debate before the final count, and when it came, it was too close for comfort. The quarantine measure failed by just 3 votes, but the damage was done. Trust between humanity and several coalition members had shattered. General Park Soong didn't wait for political games to play out. He was a military man, and he understood that wars were won through preparation, not debate. He mobilized Earth's defense fleet and began fortifying the Sol system. "We need more ships," he told Admiral Song Hae-won during a secure briefing. "If the silent sovereigns come, we'll be the first target. Terra is the keystone, according to the Ancient Ones. That makes us ground zero." Song Hae-won was already ahead of him. "I've been coordinating with our shipyards. We can have 50 new vessels combat-ready within 6 months. But we need those Ancient One weapons that Commander Jun found. Without them, we're just throwing bodies at an unstoppable force." "Dr. Hyun's team is working on that," Soong replied. "But the technology is complex. It might take years to understand, let alone replicate." Commander Lee Jun was in the laboratory when he made the discovery that changed everything. He'd been studying the Ancient One weapon schematics for weeks, frustrated by his inability to activate even the simplest device. The weapons responded to human biometrics but wouldn't function. It was like they were waiting for something. "They're not weapons," he said suddenly, making Yuna look up from her translation work. "Or at least not conventional weapons. Look at this. These don't operate on physical principles. They operate on consciousness itself. Yuna moved closer, studying the schematics. What do you mean? These devices channel thought, emotion, willpower. They take the chaos of human consciousness and weaponize it. He demonstrated with one of the smaller artifacts they'd recovered. Watch. He held the device and focused. Not on technical specifications or tactical applications, but on pure emotion. Anger at being created as a weapon. Fear for his family back on Earth. Determination to protect what mattered. The device ignited with light, reshaping itself in his hands into something that looked almost alive. It responds to intent, June said, amazed. The Ancient Ones didn't create traditional weapons. They created tools that turn human irrationality into power. The more illogical you are, the stronger they become. Word of June's breakthrough spread quickly, but it brought new problems. Several coalition species began demanding that humans surrender the Ancient One weapons for study by neutral parties. They argued that giving such powerful technology exclusively to one species was dangerous. Captain Quan De Hyan uncovered something even more disturbing during his investigation into coalition activities. He'd been digging into historical records, following trails of deleted files and encrypted communications. What he found made his blood run cold. There's a shadow organization within the coalition, he told Taemin in private. They call themselves the Preservation Front. They've been preparing for this moment for centuries. Preparing how? Taemin asked. Quan brought up classified documents on his secure tablet. They have weapons stockpiles hidden throughout coalition space. Weapons designed specifically to kill humans. They've been planning for the possibility that humanity might need to be eliminated. They've been ready to exterminate us since before we even knew the truth, Taemin said, feeling sick. It gets worse. Some of their members are in positions of significant power. Military commanders. Council members. They've been influencing policy, pushing for human restrictions, waiting for an excuse to act. The revelation nearly sparked a civil war. When Ambassador Jiwoo presented the evidence to the Coalition Council, Malvek and his Terrellian faction didn't deny it. Instead, they justified it. We took precautions, Malvek said coldly. Humanity represents an existential threat. If the Ancient Ones created you to fight the silent sovereigns, then your very existence puts the rest of us at risk. We have the right to defend ourselves by planning genocide? Jiwoo demanded. By preparing to murder billions of innocent people who never asked to be weapons? The chamber descended into chaos. Species shouted at each other. Old grievances surfaced. The coalition that had maintained peace for over 1,000 years was tearing itself apart. Meanwhile, at the edge of the silent expanse, the situation grew worse. 3 more expeditions had been sent to investigate the anomalies. All 3 returned with crews that were functionally dead. They breathed, their hearts beat, but something essential was gone. Their eyes were empty. When asked questions, they responded with perfect logic, explaining that consciousness was inefficient and should be optimized. Dr. Cho, Minji studied the affected crew members and made a horrifying discovery. Their brain activity is normal physically, but they've lost something we can't measure with instruments. Initiative, creativity, the ability to want anything beyond logical necessities. They've been silenced. Can it be reversed? Song Haewon asked. I don't know, Minji admitted. Whatever the silent sovereigns do, it's not physical damage. It's like they reach into your mind and turn off the part that makes you you. As political tensions reached their breaking point, Hakora the Jelani approached Director Kong with a proposal. Not all species fear humanity, the energy being said. The Jelani remember the gardeners with gratitude. The Menthri see humans as kin in chaos. Even some Uralians like Thorvik have come to respect your kind. What are you proposing? Kong asked. A coalition within the coalition. Species willing to stand with humanity regardless of what the council decides. If war comes, we fight together. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. As species aligned themselves either with or against humanity, a new reality emerged. The galaxy was dividing into those who saw humans as weapons to be controlled or destroyed, And those who saw them as the Ancient One's gift? A chance to survive what logic alone could not defeat? The breaking point came when long-range sensors detected a massive fleet emerging from the silent expanse. Not ships exactly, but geometric structures that hurt to look at directly. The silent sovereigns were moving, and they were heading toward coalition space. Admiral Song Hae-won stood before the council and made her proposal. Give me a fleet. 100 ships, volunteers from any species willing to fight. We'll meet them in the expanse. We'll show them that the Ancient One's plan wasn't madness. You'll be destroyed, Chancellor Dreas said. The silent sovereigns defeated the Ancient Ones. What makes you think you can succeed? Because we're not trying to outthink them, Song Hae-won replied. We're going to confuse them. Surprise them. Show them something their perfect logic can't predict or understand. We're going to show them what it means to face an enemy that refuses to make sense. The vote was called again. This time the measure passed, but barely. Song Hae-won would have her fleet, but she'd be on her own. No reinforcements. No support. If she failed, humanity would stand alone against the judgment of the coalition. As preparations began, Dr. Hyun Taemin stood with Yuna and watched the ships gather. Human vessels and alien ones side by side. Species that had barely trusted each other a year ago, now willing to fly into certain death together. Do you think we can win? Yuna asked quietly. Tae-min thought about the Ancient One's message. About being designed to be illogical. About consciousness as a weapon against perfect reason. I think we're about to find out what humanity was really made for, he said. The fleet of 100 ships crossed into the silent expanse like swimmers diving into dark water. Admiral Song Hae-won stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, and watched reality itself begin to bend around them. Navigation systems are failing, her operations officer reported. Sensors are giving contradictory readings. Space-time is distorted here. Switch to manual control, Song Hae-won ordered. Trust your instincts, not your instruments? It was the first test of the Ancient One's theory. Machines and logic failed in this place, but human intuition could navigate where computers could not. Somehow, the pilots found their way forward, following paths that shouldn't exist through space that didn't behave according to normal physics. Dr. Hyun Taemin was aboard the science vessel Discovery, part of the fleet's research contingent. He watched his instruments go mad and felt a strange calm. Everything he'd learned about the universe was proving wrong in this place, and somehow that felt right. We're getting close, Yuna said beside him, her voice tight with fear. I can feel them. Can you feel them? He could. A presence in his mind, vast and cold and utterly logical. The silent sovereigns weren't hiding. They were waiting, curious perhaps about these biological creatures who dared enter their domain. Commander Lee Jun prepared his boarding teams aboard the assault ship, Hammer. Each soldier carried weapons modified with Ancient One technology. The devices glowed softly, responding to the emotions of their wielders. Remember, Jun told his troops, these things feed on logic. They expect rational responses. So don't be rational. Be angry, be scared, be stubborn, be human. The fleet emerged from a region of twisted space and saw them. The structures the silent sovereigns called ships were impossible to fully comprehend. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, geometric shapes that hurt the mind to perceive. They hung in the void like mathematical proofs made solid, perfect, and terrible. How many? Song Hae-won asked. Sensors can't get an accurate count, came the reply. Somewhere between 50 and infinite? They keep phasing in and out of normal space. All ships, this is Admiral Song, she broadcast to the fleet. We didn't come here to win through superior firepower. We came here to do the impossible. To be the chaos in their perfect order. Show them what the Ancient Ones created. Show them humanity. The silent sovereigns attacked without warning. But it wasn't an attack in any conventional sense. They simply touched the fleet's ships with whatever passed for their awareness, and systems began to shut down. Not broken, just optimized into uselessness. Weapon systems reorganized themselves into more efficient configurations that could no longer fire. Life support remained functional, but lost all redundancy in the name of perfect efficiency, and crews started to fall silent. On the destroyer Resolute, Captain Kwande Hyen felt the presence enter his mind. It was like ice spreading through his thoughts, organizing them, removing the messy parts. The parts that made decisions based on gut feelings instead of data. The parts that hoped or feared or loved. He fought it with everything he had. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. He remembered the illogical choice to become a soldier, when his analytical mind had told him to be an engineer. He embraced every stupid, emotional, human thing about himself. The presence recoiled, confused. This consciousness didn't behave according to predictable patterns. It made choices that contradicted its own survival instincts. It valued abstract concepts like honor and duty over logical self-preservation. Quan grabbed the controls and rammed his ship directly into one of the Sovereign structures. The impact shattered both vessels, but in his final moment he smiled. The Sovereigns hadn't predicted that. They couldn't understand sacrifice aboard the indomitable. Song Hae-won watched ships fall to the Sovereigns' influence. But she also saw them fight back in ways that made no tactical sense. A frigate captain used her ship to shield a damaged cruiser, sacrificing herself for allies she'd met only months ago. An engineering crew overloaded their reactor not for efficiency, but out of spite, taking a Sovereign vessel with them. "They can't predict us," she said, understanding dawning. "Every time we do something illogical, it confuses their calculations. They have to pause, reassess. We're buying time with our chaos." Dr. Cho Min-ji made a crucial discovery as the battle raged. She'd been studying the patterns of the Sovereigns' attacks and found a weakness. They process reality in perfect mathematical sequences. Every action has a calculated response. But human emotions create quantum uncertainty in decision-making. We literally exist in a state of possibility that they can't collapse into a single, predicted outcome. "Can we weaponize that?" Taemin asked. "We already are," she replied. "Every irrational choice, every emotional response, every stupid brave thing our people do, it's all creating chaos in their systems. They're trying to calculate the incalculable." Commander Jun led his boarding teams into the heart of a Sovereign structure. The corridors inside were perfect geometric tunnels that existed in dimensions his enhanced eyes couldn't quite process. His team moved forward, weapons ready, hearts pounding with fear and determination. The Sovereigns manifested before them, not as physical beings, but as pure thought given temporary form. They communicated through direct mental contact, their words appearing in Jun's mind as perfect mathematical proofs. "You are inefficient," they said. "Your consciousness wastes energy on unnecessary processes. Fear, hope, anger, these serve no logical purpose. Allow us to optimize you." "No," Jun said aloud, projecting his thoughts at them with all the force he could muster. "We are not broken. We are not errors. We are exactly what the universe needs. Consciousness that chooses, that feels, that refuses to accept your cold perfection." He raised his Ancient One weapon, channeling every illogical emotion he'd ever felt into it. The device blazed with chaotic energy, a force that operated on principles the Sovereign's logic couldn't process. When he fired, the beam didn't just damage the structure. It introduced randomness, possibility, chance into a system designed for absolute certainty. The Sovereign's confusion rippled through their network. This wasn't supposed to happen. Biological life was predictable. Emotional responses followed patterns. But these humans and their allies were breaking every pattern, making choices that defied optimal strategy. Ambassador Ji-woo was aboard the Indomitable when she felt the Sovereigns reach into her mind. Instead of fighting, she did something they never expected. She opened herself completely to them, flooding their consciousness with every memory, every feeling, every beautiful, chaotic moment of her life. She showed them Earth's sunrise over mountains, the taste of her grandmother's cooking, the pain of her first heartbreak, the joy of her first kiss, the fear of her first combat mission, the pride of representing humanity among the stars. She showed them 5 million years of human experience compressed into pure emotional data, The sovereigns reeled. They couldn't process it. Joy and sorrow existing simultaneously. Choices made against self-interest out of love. Decisions to fight when surrender was logical. It was madness. It was beautiful. It was utterly incomprehensible. Admiral Song Haewon saw her opportunity. All ships, focus fire on their central nexus. Everything we've got? The fleet concentrated its attack on the largest sovereign structure, pouring weapons fire and Ancient One energy into it. But more than that, every human on every ship focused their will, their emotion, their stubborn refusal to be silenced. The Ancient One weapons responded to that collective consciousness. They channeled hope and rage and love and fear into beams of pure possibility. Randomness made weapon, chaos against order. Captain Kwan's sacrifice had weakened the sovereign's calculations. Ambassador Jiwoo's emotional assault had confused their logic. Commander Jun's boarding teams had introduced entropy into their perfect systems. And now, the fleet's combined attack shattered their cohesion. The central nexus began to fracture. Not destroyed, but disrupted, forced out of phase with normal reality. The sovereign's fleet started to collapse inward, retreating into whatever dimension they'd emerged from. But Song Haewon knew victory would cost everything. "Prepare for final maneuver," she ordered. "Set the ship's reactor to overload. We're going to make sure they stay gone." "Admiral, no," her executive officer protested. "We can escape. And risk them following us back to Coalition space?" She shook her head. The Ancient Ones understood. To defeat perfect logic, you have to make the illogical choice. You have to sacrifice victory for something bigger. She broadcast to the fleet. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. This is Admiral Song. It's been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth we did what the Ancient Ones created us to do. We chose consciousness over oblivion. We chose chaos over silence." The Indomitable accelerated toward the sovereign nexus. As the reactor reached critical mass, Song Hae-won thought about her family, her world, her species. She thought about every illogical choice that had led her to this moment. And she smiled. The explosion was visible across 3 star systems. The sovereign nexus collapsed, dragged down into dimensional folds where their perfect structures couldn't exist. The silent sovereigns retreated, not destroyed but confused. Their logic broken by an enemy they'd never anticipated. The fleet limped back to Coalition space, having lost 30 ships and 15,000 souls. But they'd done the impossible. They'd driven back an enemy that had destroyed the Ancient Ones. At Coalition Central, the returning heroes were met with silence. Then, slowly, representatives from every species rose to their feet in tribute. Even Malvek and the Terrellians stood, acknowledging what had been accomplished. "The Ancient Ones were right," Chancellor Dreas said, his voice heavy with emotion rare for his species. "Humanity is not a threat. They are a gift. A reminder that consciousness, in all its chaotic glory, has value beyond measure." Dr. Hyun Tae-min received one final message from the Ancient One artifacts. It activated aboard the Discovery as they crossed back into normal space. Yuna translated the words with tears streaming down her face. "We are gone, but through you we persist. You fought when logic said flee. You sacrificed when calculation demanded survival. You showed the Silent Ones what we could not. Consciousness is not an error. It is the universe experiencing itself. Guard it well. Protect the gardens we planted. And remember, our children, that the greatest strength is not in being right, but in being brave enough to be wrong." Earth became a monument, not to humanity alone, but to all conscious beings who chose to feel rather than just exist. The battle at the Silent Expanse became legend, the moment when chaos proved it could defeat order. General Park Seung established the Sentinel Protocol, a permanent defense network monitoring the expanse. Ships from every coalition species served together, united by shared purpose. The Ancient One weapons were distributed among all species willing to learn them. Because the sovereigns would return eventually, and when they did, the galaxy would be ready. Years later, Dr. Hanbora stood before a class of students, human and alien, teaching them the history of their peoples. The Ancient Ones left us more than weapons, she said. They left us a reminder. Logic is powerful, but it's not everything. Sometimes the most important choices are the ones that don't make sense. The ones we make with our hearts instead of our heads. On Earth, in the place where the first humans had looked up at the stars and wondered, a memorial was built. It bore the names of Admiral Song Haewon and all those who had fallen defending consciousness against silence. And beneath their names, a single line from the Ancient One's message. We made you to succeed where we failed. We made you to survive. We made you without fear. Humanity had been created as weapons, it was true. But in choosing how to use that purpose, in deciding to protect rather than conquer, to unite rather than divide, they had become something more. They had become the promise the Ancient Ones had hoped for. They had become proof that consciousness, with all its beautiful chaos, was worth any cost to preserve and somewhere in the dark between galaxies. The silent sovereigns calculated and recalculated, trying to understand the variable they could never solve. The variable called hope, the variable called humanity, the variable that refused to be silenced.